My name is Trent McLees. This is Laurenda Hanks, and we're the presenters for this session. I just wanted to quickly draw your attention to the screen, and I know it's a little tinier than maybe I anticipated in terms of the text, but go ahead and get out a device if you've got one, an iPad, a Chromebook, a laptop, because a good chunk of this session will be actually using the Microsoft MakeCode platform to make a game that you'll be able to use with your students in your classrooms. So this link on the board, bit.ly/tsinmakecode, will get you to that webpage so you can create an account and sort of get set up. What's the Wi-Fi code? When I got on the Wi-Fi, I did not ask. It was just like, no, it was just MCC Wi-Fi.
And if you have any trouble finding this, then just throw that hand up. We'll come help you.
Cool.
Oh, okay. Yes, he submitted it ahead of time.
It's not back here, then it's not in this room. I don't think it's hiding in that post-it note. Okay, I don't think it's here. Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. The first part of the session, we'll talk about what we did at South-Doyle High School. And this is where, as part of a larger curriculum we made, which is a STEM 1 curriculum, we created one unit that was particularly focused on this coding platform and on making games, specifically games that focused on mental health. After that, we have a couple ideas to share with you about how you could incorporate MakeCode into any curriculum. And then finally, we'll leave you with some time. We've got a model game that is an introduction game. So you should be able to make it over the course of the session, where you'll have a sprite that looks like you, a background that you design that could be your classroom, and then the game will be a coin collecting and trivia game. So over the course of the game, you'll be able to introduce yourself to students. So the game that I've designed that we'll be playing through is me introducing myself to you guys. So don't judge me on all of my fun facts in that game, but hopefully you'll get to know a little bit about this platform and how you might be able to use it in your classrooms. So first, this is how we built our sort of curriculum. And I'm gonna let Ms. Hanks tell you a little bit about what that looked like, because Ms. Hanks is one of our STEM 1 teachers and was the lead for this unit at our school.
So each of our units that we did for the STEM 1 program, all of our freshmen came in and did STEM 1. We had 4 units, and they rotated each quarter to go to those. For our unit, the technology we focused on was code and using MakeCode Arcade, using block coding. I literally knew zero coding when I started this. Zero, had never looked at it. I'm a special educator, and I got involved with the STEM program because we wanted to make sure as a school that all of our students got to be involved in STEM. And obviously, as a special educator, something that's near and dear to my heart is mental health, as it is for any of our schools, especially, you know, post-COVID and all that stuff. There's a lot of mental health aspects that we've had to help our students with. But how in the world do you connect mental health to video gaming? It wasn't easy. We literally made it better each quarter. We just started out with this overarching, this is what our goal is, and we were very transparent. So the biggest thing was making sure our kids were accessible to the technology. Could they use it? Could they get to it? Could they learn how to navigate it? And there is a lot of depth to MakeCode. There's some really complicated coding, but there's also some really basic coding. So we start there, which you guys will get to experience today, and then we build from that. And it also allows us to differentiate with our students because some of them may not move past those basic codings, but some of them may really take off and love this and be really excited, and we just let them fly. And we teach them how to, I think what I love the most about this is that it taught them how to dig for their answers. Literally the motto in my class was dig deeper. Dig deeper, whether it was with your mental health or it was with this. So even if you know zero about coding, I promise you, you can do this.
So MakeCode Arcade, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's a Microsoft program, Microsoft platform. It's also the same like block system that's used for microbits, if any of you guys have used microbits. But the arcade platform is to make a pixel-style arcade game. It utilizes drag and drop block. You can also use text code when you become a more advanced user, which allows you to do things like import different color palettes or write more complex scripts. So it grows with users, and it's in a really clear way where you can see the transformation from block to text code. And then the pixel art has the ability for you to create pixel art in other platforms as well. So depending on your application with this tool, if you're really trying to get deep into the graphics element of it, you can allow your students to import pixel art from other places and go really deep that direction. If you're trying to go really deep with code, you can move towards the text-based code. So I love the platform. It's an incredibly user-friendly platform. And it has lots of built-in tutorials as well as a lot of the materials that we've constructed. So if you need some support for some curriculum, at the end of our whole slideshow, we'll link to a folder that has every resource we've made for this course. So you guys will be able to have tutorials, you'll be able to have handouts, you'll be able to have lesson slides, all kinds of good stuff. So the second key for making this successful, Laurenda mentioned that accessibility was the most important. And so we needed to make sure our students had an early success with this program. And so the early success you can get that's really exciting is making that sprite, really getting into making the art for your game. And so we're gonna make a sprite together to get started. So what you'll need to do that is in MakeCode, go ahead and open the editor by clicking on Make a New Project. And we're gonna put in our first block of code where on start, we're gonna put in set my sprite to sprite of kind player. That block is in the sprites section. It's super easy to find. So once you open that editor, you'll see a whole bunch of columns for different types of blocks. It is on the left side of the screen right next to the slide. And you can just drag in that block that says set my sprite to sprite of kind player. You can also directly make your sprite in the assets editor, which is the directions that are on the screen. Regardless, what you're gonna look for is this PNG style checkerboard background. And on that background, you'll be able to use little pixel dots to draw a character. Give yourself some simple eyes, try to mess with the hair color, understand that it's a limited palette. So if you choose instead to make a sprite that looks like a ghost, or a sprite that looks like hard candy, or a sprite that looks like a dog, that's okay, because the sprite just needs to represent you. It's just an introduction sprite, so it doesn't have to be human. You could just do a smiley face. I see somebody doing a smiley face with just a purple smile. We've got some people doing attempts at humanoid figures. I'm going to quickly jump forward a slide just to show you my two sprites. Neither looks particularly like me, but the one on the left is from a game I made for an exemplar for students where I was focusing on the theme of depression because that's something I really try to relate to my students about. It's an experience that has sort of defined a significant chunk of my life. And so my game was about the experience of kind of wandering in that haze of depression and anxiety when you're caught in a loop and you can't see your way forward. So I made a whole game about that feeling where this ghost is caught in a loop trying to figure out how they can self-actualize. And then, of course, I have my hip, self-actualized Mr. McLees with my sunglasses looking super cool. So you can be creative with what your sprite looks like. We're going to go back to the directions slide and just give you guys maybe like 3 more minutes. Work on playing around and making a sprite for yourself. And if you need some help, Laurenda and I will bop around and check in.
So it's under sprite. And then it's this one right here. And you just pull that and plop it right in there. And then when you click on this, it'll pull up your platform where you can also look at like gallery if there's something you like and you can draw over top of it too. So like if you like something that's in here that you want to represent you, you're welcome to use those as well and then just tweak them to make them yours.
Wow. Some of these sprites are like really good and I'm feeling bad about my pixel art skills, but that's okay. It's good that I still learn too. Perfect, if you put that block. Something that you vibe with, maybe pizza, maybe tacos, whatever you, because the game is an intro, so whatever you're like, feel like if the students see it, they get to grab that. All right, can everybody go ahead and pause for a second, and we're gonna keep moving forward. If you haven't had time to perfect your pixel art sprite, don't stress. You can choose something from the gallery. You can put in an incomplete sprite because you'll be able to edit any part of your code at any part of the process. So like none of this is final. And that's something we encourage our students to think about as they're working as well. Like Ms. Hanks said, dig deeper. If they are halfway through the process and they realize, I want to go back, I want to try something different, that's a totally okay place to be. So we already talked about my sprites. I'm going to hand it back over to Laurenda to talk about the key to making this platform work in your classrooms.
So the biggest thing is I can tell you the kids absolutely love the pixel art part. Like it's hard for them at first, but like they love being able to create. I think one of the most intriguing pixel arts that I got, because we teach high school, but one of my students literally made the coolest looking eyeball, like for his game. It was so cool. And he even taught it he animated it so that as it was going through his screen, it changed positions and looked different ways. It's really cool. But even if your student only can do the basic, it's not meant to be frustrating. It's meant to be fun, right? Because who doesn't love gaming, right? At some point or another, it's a great buy-in. That's why we start out. The first thing we do is have them create a sprite and a little mini game that introduces themselves to us first day. Then after that, we jump into mental health. And I've already got their buy-in because they're already seeing that they're going to get to create a game. And so then we start into the mental health awareness and support. I was amazed. We go in with preconceived ideas of what our students will and won't like. We really do. And I thought, these kids are going to hate this. They're going to be like, are you kidding me? Especially as freshmen, right? They're still in between that stage of really understanding themselves. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to. I was shocked. They love it. They really love the insight that they get into themselves and into other people. Now, they may not always say it to you, but they will. So students have time to talk about their wellness, their feelings, mental health, their experiences, why and how they could use code to interact with this issue. If we go into. So how I start that out is we literally do a gallery walk. Kids like to get up and move around, right? So I put these big pieces of paper all around the room, and they literally brainstorm. Each of them are labeled mental health, mental illness, physical health, physical illness, and they as a group decide what that is. They just put words on defining it for themselves. Words that describe it. What does it mean to you? And then they literally present, and then we discuss it together. And I'm amazed at the variety of answers and things that they get with that. And so as you can see, so this is them in the small groups, talking with each other, talking it out, and then bringing it up and actually talking to everybody about it. It's pretty amazing getting them interacting with that. And then dig deeper. So I will say this. If you're going to do this as in its entirety and try to pull something like this into like a STEM class, I had to help a lot of my students dig deeper. So once we got past this, we literally got into interviewing each other about our own, what do we like? What do we dislike? What do we like about ourselves? What do we not like about ourselves? And sometimes they had a hard time expressing that. And so as they were working, I would individually pool and conference with kids to help them know how to dig deeper. They don't always know what that means. So I had to kind of show them what that means.
So regardless of what your thought is of how you might apply this, the key is we don't want to just have students make a game just to be like, hey, it's cool, you made a game. Giving them that why for their purpose in making a game motivates their learning and allows them to make the connection of code is a skill that has real world consequences. Mental health is something that is just a really hot issue and significant issue with our school population, and I think a lot of you would probably say that you see that in your schools as well. And for those of you who are, is anybody in here, would you define yourself as a gamer, as a video game person? Anybody? Nice. So you guys are probably familiar, there are lots of pre-existing games that do this in really impactful ways. So there's a game that we allowed our students to get some experience playing called Celeste. That's a really great platforming game about anxiety. There are some games that you might explore that might not be appropriate for your students, but there are some games that deal with trauma, some games that deal with HIV/AIDS, games that are designed specifically to talk about social issues. There's a really cool one out there that you play as a person experiencing homelessness, so you can get a look into that experience. So if you're interested in learning about some of these games that you can share, talk to me after the presentation, because there are AAA games that are made with these themes, and they're great examples to show students. Professionals are doing this, these issues are coming up, and it's having real-world impact on players' experiences. It can have a positive outcome for players of games. And so once we have the initial buy-in with pixel art and the why with mental health, we brought them down into the library, and they were able to explore the games. We set up a whole arcade. They played each other's games from previous units. They played some of these professional games. And now they were able to start doing that de-thinking, that design thinking process of, I'm not just playing this game as a player anymore. I'm playing this game as somebody who is going to be a creator. And they were starting to think about, let me get inside and look at the code. And so that's where we want to talk to you guys about just a few ideas of what you could do. We sat down and ideated, and we're just thinking, like, what could be the why in other curricular areas for learning a tool like this? Because we want STEM tools to enter all of our classrooms. So in a social studies class, maybe they're doing a research unit, maybe they need a different way to present. They can set a game in a time period. They can set some criteria for what does it look like to be successful in Victorian England. The player has to gather things that make them successful in Victorian England, make choices that represent that. Laurenda is a special education and math teacher, so we have some examples of what that might look like.
So in the math as well, so literally because you can code your sprites to speak, and you can put text in there as well. So there are ways to literally have them like present a problem or explain a concept that maybe is a little more complicated. They can go in there and do that. I know even on the social studies side too, just to add to that, sometimes they may have researched a specific person of an era, and that person is going through and they have like different backgrounds showing that, and then that person is they're educating the person who's playing the game about that era. So same thing with the math as well. The other thing is that pixel art actually has more math in it than you would imagine. There's dimensions to it, there's slopes to it. How about when it's like this? Like, how am I going to make this look like an arc? So there's quite a few different things you can do with that.
And then ELA is honestly like the easy answer is maybe make them make a game where they summarize things. Something I have been experimenting with MakeCode is making role-playing games. So making games where there are multiple pathways, where your choices impact the levels you go to and things like that, which can be really important in an ELA classroom to talk about plot development, to talk about cause and effect, to talk about narrative direction or characterization. Our English teachers teach Things Fall Apart, and that's a book where I think there's a lot of tension between what the characters do and what they're like destined to do or locked into doing by circumstances beyond their control. Games can really illustrate that for students, where they can have a game where it's a linear and a game where there are branching pathways. And contrasting those experiences as a player really helps students empathize with those experiences on the part of characters. So finally, we're going to return to your sprite, and we're going to make a game that you guys can use. So we're going to stop talking at you, and we're going to start working with you. So to start, we've got to give our people a place to be. We have to give our sprite a place that they exist. So we're going to go back to our editor, and in the scenes block section, so last time we clicked on sprites, this time we're clicking on scene. We're going to select the set background image to block. And we're going to draw a background for our sprite.
So for those of you who are on a phone, it's not showing you the words. So it's the one that looks like a tree on the background.
And if you are worried about your pixel art skills, again, you can choose gallery and choose a background from the gallery. To help you feel a little more comfortable, I will show you my background. It is no Picasso, it is no Van Gogh, but It's my classroom, you know? There are no desks, but it's a classroom, and there's Pac-Man on the wall trying to let them know. So you can create a background, anything you want, and what you should see in the preview window is your sprite standing in that background. And we'll give you just like 1 or 2 minutes to get those 2 pieces of code blocked in, and then we'll keep going. All right. In the interest of time, even if you're not done with your background, I want to show you guys the next couple things so you can see. So if I can have you guys pause your background creation for a moment. And what you'll see is there are 2 steps, 2 ways you can present information to your students in the game. There's 2 ways you can present text at a basic level. You can present text as a dialog box, or you can actually set it for your sprite to speak. In the interest of our timing, what I want to show you is actually just all of the code that it takes to create this. So right here, everything you've seen so far, this is the code that it would take to get your game to look like that slide I just showed you. So we establish at the start of the game, our sprite appears on the screen. We establish where our sprite should appear on the screen. We go ahead and establish what our game looks like. And then I have 2 different types of dialog text. I have our long text where I just introduce the whole game. Welcome to Mr. McLees' class. And then I have my make my sprite say text where I can actually have the sprite speaking to the students. Symbolically, I think that makes a big difference in the way the information is received by students. Practically, maybe it doesn't, you know? But it's at least fun to play with it, to have visual differentiation in the what students are experiencing in the game. Can anybody guess why I had to put in these pause blocks in between my speak blocks? Yeah, so my speech bubbles don't overlap with one another. It's a simple thing, but it's a coding thing. It's a coding thought process thing. Because our default thought process as users rather than creators is to think, if I tell my sprite to say this thing for 5,000 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds, nothing else is going to happen while it's doing that. But that's not the way computers think. Computers think, oh, you told me to do this, but you also told me to do this, so I'm doing them. Like, get over it. So we have to give it more specific directions. And that's a really important learning process for students with code. So y'all's code at this point probably just has this block of set my sprite and this block of set background image. But if you want to experiment with making a more complete game, all of these things add a little more context and a little more power to what's happening with your code. I want to just quickly, what I'll do is I'm going to show you these links. This link right here takes you to a fully playable version of my introduction game, where it will tell you about 10 fun facts about me. Once you collect 35 coins, the game ends. You've won. Victory is yours. And you can also then click to examine the code. So if you want to steal my code, borrow it, play around with your game, you can do so. So with whatever time we have left, what Laurenda and I would like to do is I'll leave this slide up. Those of you who want to mess around with trying to improve your game, steal our code, make it your own, you can navigate to that link and use it to buff up your background and sprite. But otherwise, we really want to open it up. If anybody's got questions for us about the platform or about our curriculum, this seems like a great time for Q&A. So are there any questions?
So just so you know, too, like I had one student who had an amazing game when he finished it, and he's like, well, I cheated. And I'm like, what do you mean you cheated? He's like, yeah, I had to look up videos to know how to do this piece, and I found this game that had this piece, and I just pulled that over into mine and then did this. And I'm like, that's literally what professional gamers do. That's literally what they do. And there's tons of blogs and tons of videos that says this is how you do this or this is how you do that, or hey, I've got this bug on my system. I haven't experienced this before. How do I fix it? That's literally what they do as professionals. And that's what we want our kids to do in every aspect of learning, is know how to dig for their answers. Because when they get out there in real life, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to find their answers. They're not going to always have them. We're not going to have a whole lot of our answers. And so that's what I love about this, is that it teaches them that they have to find the answers. Like, rarely do I just go around and show them how to do something. I'm like, okay, here's your resources. You can go here and look this up here. You can go here and look this up here. I might tell them what it's called. And I'm like, and if you don't find it there, then you're going to Google, how do I do this in MakeCode Arcade? And so it really teaches them to be more independent. I love that. So anybody got any other questions? We've only used it this year in the high school level. I know that some of my high schoolers use it at the middle school level, but what I would suggest, because I have taught elementary school as well, I would suggest we literally bust this through in a quarter. Obviously, they may need things really slowed down. I could even see, like, with the pixel art, a whole lot of our art teachers they could amazingly do a unit on pixel art and help them understand how it works and those kinds of things. This could be way cross-curricular. I could totally see how this could be unified across. And I know that this was just one unit of 4. We had 16 teachers at our school that took this on this year and said, listen, our kids are going to get this. We're going to make sure they get STEM, no matter what. They come from very underserved families. We have a very high level of poverty in our school, and we were determined that our kids were going to access this. And so literally
we just bit it off. And we have teachers from absolutely every area in our school. We have language arts teachers, history teachers, we have math teachers, we have CTE teachers, everyone. We had people from all over the place, and it made for an amazing collaboration. And then it just literally just bled right out into our school all throughout. And we got such access to that it ended up, we would hear about a project that someone was doing in a classroom and say, oh, you could totally do this on a 3D printer to help with that. Or, oh, you could totally use the spheros to do the angles and play pool with the spheros. Or, oh, you could totally do this. And I'm sorry, I know this was the video gaming, but I can't help it. I'm so excited. The difference in our students is amazing. And at the elementary level, I would suggest just really simple. And even with the text, there's a little search button right at the top. If you guys look at the very top of where it says sprites and all that stuff, there's a search button. So if you put in there text, it's going to pull up bubbles that you can use to do text with. So I promise it's not bad. You may have to, if it's early elementary, you might say, okay, hey, we're going to write our ABCs. We're going to make our ABCs using pixel art. Literally, they can make their ABCs using pixel art. You could say, language arts, I think about that too. If they're learning verbs and nouns or anything like that you could create or they could help you create, say, hey, I need someone to make a character with this verb or that. And then the game might be when they collide, if they collide with, if you give the word and they have to collide with the character that is a verb or, but they collide with the noun, then it's wrong. And you could tell it, okay, you get a point if you hit the right one, you lose a life if you don't. So there's just so many ways that you could include them and then take it and run with it yourself. And I know that how cool to walk in on your first day of school and introduce yourself to the students with a game. Really? That's amazing. I know we were thinking about that. We just thought about that when we were coming here to think of something for you guys. I was like, we totally have to sell this to our principal to do this as one of our in-service classes before school starts next year. Our teachers can introduce themselves with video games. So it's just exciting, and it really gets some buy-in from the kids. And if you guys have a question, we did, I'm assuming they'll have access to this PowerPoint. We also have a resource page that we use for our kids that have frequently asked questions. How do I make my sprite move up and down? Or how do I make this do this? And it literally gives them links to that. So it's our website we did. And what we did before we came here to help all of you is we added a teacher resource tab for you that I put all of our rubrics, now this is high school level, take them, tweak them, make them something you can use. I've got the mental health slides that I used. I've got, everything we used for this, including the gaming, is there for you guys to download and use for your own. And in this slide has mine and Mr. McLees's email. I promise it's okay if you want to email us. We are more than excited to help you brainstorm some ideas with this. And not just this. We have other colleagues doing things with spheros and all kinds of stuff. And we don't want to keep this stuff to ourselves. Yeah. We want to share it.
If I can do a somewhat shameless plug, our room monitor and myself are presenting on overall the STEM 1 stuff that we have done at our school in the afternoon sessions. This afternoon, it's the last block of sessions. It's got a punny title in the app, Making Your School a Sauna, how to bring STEAM to your whole school. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the chuckles. I came up with that one. Yeah. So anyway, feel free to come to that one because a lot of this stuff did bleed out into whole campus-wide collaborations that we can tell you guys about. And it gives you a brief overview of all the different units we came up with. So if there's something that really catches your attention for your classroom, that'll be a great place to get a lot of ideas in your brain. Please feel free to linger and ask some questions. I'll leave this slide up if you need to take some shots. And thank you guys for coming. Thank you.